Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, it gives me a great pleasure to be here today in the third summit. I remember the first one, which was just before the pandemic. And I congratulate actually the Arab British Chamber for sustaining this important summit that links the Arab business community to the British counterparts. This session, the current session, is addressing an important issue which is related to food security, generally speaking, water scarcity, and health. So these topics are really important. And our discussion, I think, with our panelists will be focused more on how can we make links, bridges between the British business people, technology, and the Arab counterparts in these areas, taking into consideration that in the Arab region, as we know, we are witnessing growing population reaches around 1.7% annually. And this growth in the size of population meets a scarcity of water. So if we are going to take this into consideration, we are going to discover that there is a challenge, a great challenge regarding agriculture in general, and accordingly regarding the food security file. So these challenges, if we consider the global challenges as well, like the war in Ukraine, like the pandemic, like inflation, this compounds the issue and requires a great solutions for this. Of course, this leads to the management of water and the health. I will start now by the first panelist, Dr. Chris, to start his discussion regarding this matter. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, my lords, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be asked to share a few thoughts here today on this very interesting panel concerning food security, health security, water security, and energy security. Just to give you a brief background, I'm a doctor of medicine. I've been in academia as well as in postgraduate medicine. I also chair our family company, the Macwoods Group, which started back in 1841. We're celebrating, I think, our 183rd year. I'm also a former diplomat. I was the former High Commissioner to the UK. And I've also been very much involved with Commonwealth, so looking at how to bridge the gap between developing and developed countries. Now, when people talk about health security, for example, obviously it's a growth industry. The first thing that springs to mind, of course, is AI, because everyone's focusing on how to develop more and more iterative algorithms to mimic the brain synapses and to be able to integrate that into healthcare. But I'd just like to take you to a personal journey I had and share a few thoughts with you. Now, this is back in 1989. I've shown here chromosomes, which are, as you know, the blueprint of the body. And this is illustrated, the DNA double helix is illustrated here. And this, back in '89, when I was doing a research degree between medicine, I chose to do a genetic project. What it involved was looking at the DNA, which is the blueprint of the body. As you can see, the chromosomes we look at the double helix. And the technique we were doing was called, actually used an enzyme called thermus aquaticus polymerase. And what it did was a 3-step process, very simple. It separated the DNA strands. You then attach primers to the DNA strands, and then make multiple copies of it. And what you do is, when you do it, after about 30 cycles, exponentially, you can have multiple million copies of this DNA. So it's a way of amplifying DNA using this technique. And a lot of my colleagues, as well as my ex-bosses, said, well, why have you chosen to do a project with these silly little enzymes? This was back in 1989. They said, why don't you do something sensible like sickle cell anemia or cardiomyopathy? But I said, well, it's cutting edge, and I'm fascinated by the power of genetics in healthcare, and who knows, it might be useful in the future. Now, this technique had only been discovered a year before, in 1988. Now, this technique is actually called the polymerase chain reaction, otherwise known as PCR. So I know all of you today would have heard of the PCR because of the pandemic, but 30 years ago, it was unheard of, and people scoffed at the idea. So the whole idea, the purpose of telling you about this is because I think as we look at collaboration, whether in business, whether in healthcare, whether in health security or energy security, always be open to the smallest of ideas. Because you never know, they might become big in the future. And small is beautiful. So as we are all here to collaborate, but let's look at even the tiniest of ideas, just like the PCR back in '89 when I decided to work on it. People scoffed at it, but today everyone talks about PCR. Now the second point, if I may go back to this, at the end of this degree, when they were giving out the prizes, and I managed to just about get a first class, and then when the professor was presenting the prize to me, he said, look, we warmly congratulate you on this, but let me tell you how it was when you first came to the interview. He said, when we were interviewing your colleagues and we asked them, why do you want to do a cutting-edge genetic project for health security, they gave eminently suitable answers. They talked about sickle cell anemia, they talked about trying to clone the cystic fibrosis gene. But when you came along, they were pointing to me, when you came along, and we said, why do you want to do a genetics project at this stage? You started talking about how to solve the world's food problems and growing bigger potatoes. And they said, quite honestly, boy, we thought you'd come to the wrong interview. But we knew there was something in there. So that highlights my second point about food. They said you started talking about food security and trying to address poverty throughout the world. So the second point I'm trying to make, as we all try and collaborate, is whatever collaborative project we embark on, let's do it to achieve the maximum impact for the greatest number of people. Whilst we do it to enhance our countries, let's do it to be able to address the vulnerable and marginalized in society. That is really the ultimate aim. And now we go on to plantations. It's another area we've been involved with. We've been involved with plantation management for over 150 years. And plantations are a great way to address the food security problem because they, as you know, they absorb carbon dioxide through photosynthesis, and the soil soaks up organic carbon. And deriving from plantations, the Macwoods Group also does tea. And why has it had a resurgence in recent years? Well, because of the COVID pandemic. When all of us were sitting isolated by our computers for 2 years, what people were doing was trying to see how can we boost our immunity? How can we have something against or ameliorate the coronavirus? And one area of doing it is by specifying and actually addressing particular targets on the coronavirus gene. And what people have realized is that tea, both black and green tea, is very rich in free radical scavengers. Now, what are free radical scavengers? Well, when a disease or when an invader invades the body, it sets off little free radicals which cause the damage. Now, tea, like vitamin C, is a free radical scavenger, and it mops up the free radicals. So that is why there's been a great resurgence for immunity and for health security in ideas in things like tea. And of course, we do particular specific connoisseurs blends of those teas. I think it's a great health drink. And here we have one of the greatest proponents of healthy lifestyles and environmental sustainability. This is His Majesty King Charles. This was 10 years ago, taken when he visited us. And there you see the then Prince of Wales tasting, analyzing and tasting some of our connoisseurs' teas all those years ago. And it's really interesting that just a few days ago, on his 75th birthday, His Majesty launched the Food Project, also to address food security and insecurity issues. So he's been streets ahead of the game in terms of environmental and social and health sustainability. And I've been proud to serve on one of his charities, which addresses issues like this. And now we go on to energy security. It's an area we've also been, it's the idea is uninterrupted availability of energy sources at an affordable price. We also are looking and are involved with both hydropower projects and solar power projects, because therein lies the opportunity. Now, finally, you would have heard a few days ago, coming back to healthcare, when I spoke about sickle cell, maybe I should have done the sickle cell project, because only last month, British institutes managed to come up with a answer using gene editing tool for sickle cell anemia. And this is very much a world's first. So it just goes to show how collaborative projects can lead to great ideas. So I hope in my last few minutes that I've covered the areas that we are interested in, both from our company perspective, but also me as a doctor of medicine. Our interests are health security, energy security, food security, real estate, and of course, tea. But if you look at the Arab-UK partnerships, there are so many wonderful partnerships that are taking place. I've given you just a few ideas, like the Oman Hospital project between the UK and Oman, the UAE acquisition of Circle Health by Pure Health of UAE, the ongoing UK-GCC trade negotiations, the university hospitals in Jordan, the IPGMTS collaboration with Saudi Arabia, and the software projects on electronic medical records with Qatar. So there are many opportunities, and the UK-Bahrain strategic partnership. So there are many opportunities for us to collaborate. And I think the reason all of us are here, all of you and all of us, is we all are here to be able to contribute something and join and collaborate. And it brings me to when a journalist was asking Mother Teresa of Calcutta, who was dealing with the lepers and the marginalized, he asked her, but all these things you're doing, isn't it just a drop in the ocean? And she said, well, yes, but the ocean would be less without my drop. And all of you are here, all of us are here to contribute, each of us, in our little way, to the great ocean of goodwill. And I think as I end my slide, I'd just like to say that it is imperative upon all of us. We may think that we're only doing one little drop, but each of us, with our drop, can contribute to the ocean and ensure that everyone in the world, especially the marginalized, the underprivileged, the poverty-stricken, the oppressed, that everyone today should have foods, the security of food, the security of energy, the security of water, and the security of health. And on that line, it is incumbent upon all of us to contribute each of our little drops towards the reservoir of goodwill to ensure that every single person in the world, particularly the marginalized and the vulnerable, are recipients of this. And on that note, I'd like to say, I hope with these last few thoughts I've shared that some of you may feel I've done my little drop for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chris, for small is beautiful and possible as well, and the challenges that you raised regarding all the items which are the food security, the health security, the energy security, and the innovation in the agri-tech, which is really needed in our region, in the Arab countries, especially when we know to what extent we are suffering from water scarcity in the region. Now we are going to switch to the next speaker, which is actually going to discuss the same issues as well. Dr. Peter Thomas, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
think we may have the wrong slides on the, oh, perfect, that's the right slides. Yeah, many thanks for the invitation to speak today. So my name is Peter Thomas. I'm by background a consultant pediatric eye surgeon, but I'm one of the doctors who works on digital transformation of Moorfields Eye Hospital. And for reference, we're one of the biggest providers of eye hospitals in the world. We do about 800,000 encounters per year across a network of state and private hospitals in the UK and UAE. So this is my favourite picture of me in clinic because it's very unusual because the baby isn't crying. Usually the first thing a baby does when they see an eye doctor is cry, but it shows you what the traditional model of eye care has been like. It's been a consultant on one side of the picture and the patient on the other side of the picture and a microphone in between. And that causes us, I mean, it's a very good way of providing care because it brings expertise straight to the patient, but it causes us problems because that means that the patient and the equipment and the doctor all have to be in the same place at the same time. And as you want to scale that, as you want to address inequalities globally in terms of providing healthcare, that need for everything to be in the same place at the same time becomes problematic. We've been working on alternative models of providing care for the past few years, and this was back in September 2019, a very well-timed pilot actually, showing the first ever microscopic examination of an eye, performed at a distance. That's me with that same microscope from the last picture in the rain outside of Moorfields, having my eye examined by the same microscope, and a mobile telephone which is streaming the microscopic images of my eye during examination at 4K resolution in real time to my friend and colleague Ian Livingston up on the stage in Edinburgh, who was commentating on the appearance of my eye. When COVID came along, we scaled these services. We've now given almost 100,000 appointments in this way. Annually, that saves our patients the equivalent of traveling twice to the moon and back. We save our patients about 6 years of life that they don't spend in cars and on trains coming into their appointments. About 11 times the average salary we save our patients in train tickets and taxi fares. And for the environment, about 51 tons of carbon dioxide per year from this one service model alone. As technology develops and people get more and more impressive consumer hardware in their houses, we find that these are increasingly applicable as clinical-grade tools as well. This is a virtual reality headset. You can see my first prototype from 2014 at the top left and our most recent one in the middle at the top. And what it's allowing us to do is just using typical hardware that many people have at home, particularly with the new generation of VR headsets that are coming out this year that are tracking eyes, allowing us to do things like measure and diagnose misalignment of the eyes at a distance. So, for example, if you have a child or you are self-treated for a squint where the eyes turn inwards or outwards, we can now measure this with clinical-grade precision using very cheap consumer-grade hardware and potentially do that at a distance. There are some things with the eyes that we can't do with the patient at home. So, for example, very expensive imaging of the back of the eye. And for that, we're diversifying our models of how we can bring the patients into contact with those machines. A couple of photographs there. Moorfields at Hoxton, that's in a warehouse. There's no clinicians on site. It's just patients, machines, and technicians. And the Brent Cross Shopping Centre, we took over an old branch of New Look. For those of you not familiar, that's a clothing company. They closed down. We took over their site, filled it full of machines, and we get through many thousands of patients per month in that. It allows us to take clinical grade images and then provide the Moorfields expertise at a distance where we can assess those images and diagnose and manage the patient. This creates us an issue where we potentially will have a vast number of patients coming to a vast number of different sites. So a lot of the work we're engaged in at the moment is working out what the best way to utilize a network of sites is so that patients can have images of their eye taken in their local optometry practices like Specsavers, and then Moorfields can have a look at those at a distance, so providing our world-leading eye care without patients necessarily having to be anywhere near us. It's my last slide now, and this is just some of the work we're doing on artificial intelligence. Moorfields is a real leader in medical artificial intelligence, particularly in eye care, unsurprisingly. On the right is the sort of the research trial that kicked it all off, which published in 2018, and that was us showing that scans of the eyes, we could develop artificial intelligence with our collaborators at Google DeepMind that was equivalent to the performance of our best professors, and we keep on finding surprising capabilities. So the most recent bit of publicity we had on this was back in August when we published our findings that we were able to take these scans of the eyes, which are collected in high street optometry practices all over the country, and we could start to detect the presence of Parkinson's disease 7 years before a clinical onset. So that's the kind of thing that we're dealing with here, and why eye care will be increasingly important as we go forwards, not just for management of eye disease, but also for management of the patient's health in general. I'll leave you with this summary, conscious of short on time, so I won't talk anymore. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Peter Thomas. And now we'll move to the last speaker today, in this session, Mr. Quincy. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum and good morning, everybody. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, and all protocols observed. Thank you, ABS 2023, for hosting us for this great event, and for the powerful speeches that we heard earlier today. Thoughts for all those affected in the Arab region. So I'm going to put this slide up, and normally you think of one place and maybe the best football team in the world, but we don't want the panel discussion to last over 4.2 minutes, which is probably all I've got. So we'll have a discussion later on. My name is Quincy Quayson. I'm the Operations and Business Development Director for Liverpool City Region. From Liverpool, if you can tell from my accent, but based in Dubai, and I've been based there for 7 years, so familiar with both sides of the discussion today. The reason why we're here is to talk about Liverpool City Region Freeport, and as an enabler, as one of the 12 freeports within the UK, to help with innovation and help with growth within the UK and within opportunities to support trade and investment for both the Arab world and the UK. So what is a freeport, and why was I putting up the Liverpool slide, and is Liverpool not just about football? Well, Liverpool is one of 12 UK freeports. Freeport is like a free zone, which you may be familiar with in other parts of the world, and it's a 45-kilometer zone, providing incentives around customs, tax, and planning permission. And why is that important? Well, it'll help stimulate growth, help stimulate innovation, which I'll talk about a bit shortly after. At its core, the Freeport has three main objectives. It's a national hub for trade and investment, to provide the hotbed for innovation, which we'll touch on, and a promoting regeneration for high-skilled jobs and job creation. So really the discussion, what we've been talking around in this panel, is around the innovation piece, in order to protect and sustain healthcare, as well as the food and water, as our colleagues discussed before. I'm going through these slides quickly, but hopefully you'll have time to visit our stand on slide 5. But these provide some of the benefits that the Freeport offers in terms of tax and customs benefits. And what this does is enables the companies that are invested within the UK to incentivize them to invest, but also to reduce the duties and burdens that they may have to trade with countries in the Middle East as well. So we'll come, and please feel free to come downstairs and have a discussion with us and the panel for the Liverpool City Region and UK Freeports to discuss more about benefits and how the benefits may suit you and your businesses. But it's really to enable companies and organizations to save, to invest in growth and innovation that will be able to change their futures. One of the sites that is set up is a custom site operator that enables trade, and it really is an example of a company that has reduced its amount of business cost and has helped other businesses trade with other businesses around the world. It's called SSO Logistics. They're a custom site operator within Liverpool Freeport, and I do implore you to visit their site as well and share and see some of the sharings that they've had in terms of food security and how they've helped with increased trade from the food perspective. From a Liverpool City Region perspective, I go back to another famous Liverpool photo. And yes, we have a famous history in music, but we do more than music. And beyond the Beatles, we did a lot of investments within innovation and within the healthcare sector. This slide is intentionally busy just to show the amount of activity and the amount of engagements and assets in the Liverpool City Region in the health and life sciences space. So our key and core areas of growth are advanced manufacturing, health and life sciences, and digital and creative. If we talk about health and innovation, it's a prime area with prime assets, resources, universities, capabilities to further grow the opportunity for sustainability of healthcare within the UK, internationally, and to trade and provide opportunities that we can export. I'll pause there because I know there's a lot of rustling and we only had 4 minutes or so, but please feel free to come over to the stand and of 5, I believe, downstairs, have a discussion, see if there's an opportunity for your businesses to stimulate innovation and growth within the city region. And we'd be more than happy to talk about some of the assets like the vaccine centres, the School of Tropical Medicine, etc. Welcome to have the discussion. So I hope you have a brilliant rest of the event. And again, welcome again to Liverpool City Region if you have the opportunity to go. And we'll have a debate on football later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I think that we are very punctual to the time and addressing the topic precisely in a very short way, but actually addressing the idea. And downstairs, I think we can have more information regarding things. Thank you very much.